Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order. It's our October regular board meeting. We've got a full house, which is awesome to see. Excited to see everybody back here, and I'm excited for the agenda we've got tonight. So, looks like we've got a quorum. The only trustee we have missing is Bruce, who's out of town on business. Everybody else is ready to go. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the meeting, just want to let everybody know about public comment rules. So we'll have two times for public comment. One is at the beginning of the meeting. Those are for things that you saw on the agenda that you'd like us as a board to know about before we vote on something. So it gives you an opportunity to talk about things that are on the agenda. And then at the end of the meeting, we have another public comment section, which is to talk about items that weren't on the agenda, but you still would like the board to hear and listen to. With all that being said, and if you're going to do public comment, there's yellow form over on the table over there. And fill that out and turn it into Leslie, and we'll get you on the list. So, all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Randy, do we have any other additional agenda items for tonight?
We do not.
All right, Leslie, do we have any public comment on any agenda items? All right, thank you. All right, that moves us into the consent agenda. So, board, you've had time to review it. In front of us is the the consent agenda, which talks a little bit about just the minutes from last month, some of the financial stuff that we look through every month. Doesn't look like we're into the school year, so there weren't any hires, which is nice. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, Sherry. All those in favor, any additional comment or discussion? All those in favor?
Sorry.
Go for it.
It might have just been me, but I didn't see the minutes. I saw the finances, but I don't know if I saw last month's minutes in there. And it could have been me.
We had some of the email copy.
Yeah,
Oh, it was. Okay, I might have just overlooked it.
No, you're correct. As I'm looking through this packet, that we are missing them in this packet. I do believe they're on the online version, so we probably need to table that till the next meeting because they're not in the packet in front of you unless you can
I'm looking
access them
and
online.
I'm not seeing them either.
Okay.
So I know I
Yep.
saw them someplace else, but I don't know where I saw them, but I don't see it on here. I see the board report, secretary's report.
Yeah, they are in existence, and probably can just double up on those at the next meeting if the board's okay with that.
Yep.
So I think what we'll need to do is amend the motion to approve the consent agenda minus, well, there aren't any in here, but table the minutes for next meeting, the September minutes. I'll make that motion.
Support.
So we have an amended motion to pass the consent agenda minus the missing September minutes, which we'll approve at the next meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. All right, we got a lot going on tonight. So we're going to start off with recognitions. All right, let's go. So excited about this. Let's go this way.
Share the mic here. I'll start this off. So Mr. Roethlisberger and I, on behalf of the board, want to acknowledge and thank our administrators. It is Principal Recognition Month, so tonight we've invited in our lead principals, our deans of teaching and learning, and our athletic director are joining us tonight. So we've got a list here, and we just want to recognize them. So we're going to have to coordinate how we're doing this. You want me to call names and you hand out, or you call names and I hand out?
Yeah, you call names, I'll hand them out. And then,
Okay.
But I'll just second
Yep.
that, thanks for everything you guys do. If it wasn't for you, our kids wouldn't get the education that they get. You help things move smoothly. And I know, as you get the older and older kids, it becomes a little less of it becomes more of a thankless job, right? The little kids still love their principals. As they get older, the high school kids don't necessarily love their principals as much. I hear Samantha, my youngest, talk about her principal way more than I hear Anna talk about hers. So, once again, thank you for everything you do, and we do appreciate it.
Okay, well said. Yeah, our central office echoes that, and I know countless hours to kind of look around and scan the room for the leadership team. Just appreciate the support and the collegiality, really just the collaborative nature that we're working together under. So thank you very much. We'll just start. We're going to go youngest to oldest in terms of student ages. Let me clarify that. Stephanie Eaton is our principal at the Early Childhood Center. Come on down. And you're in your second year with us, and I'm not going to get this right as I move down the list. So what we're going to have you do is we do want to snap a photo of everybody together. Maybe just awkwardly stand kind of out there. Not awkward for you. Anyway, so Stephanie, thank you very much for your dedication and service. We're going to move to the early elementary school. We have Melissa Martin as our principal and Pete Campbell, our Dean of Teaching and Learning. Melissa Martin's in her first year with us. And Mr. Campbell, this is year 4. Got it. So thank you to you two, your service.
I got to practice doing this at graduation.
Yes, you did. You're very efficient. Next, we're moving to the later elementary school. Kristen Pratley is the principal, and Carrie Wendell is the dean. Now, Kristen, you're in your first year here at Mattawan as principal, and Carrie, help me fill in the blank. 20 as the Dean of Teaching and Learning. So thank you both for your service and dedication. We're moving now to the middle school. Chip Schumann is our lead principal at the middle school. Kathy Brewster is our dean of one of our deans of teaching and learning, and Nate Angles is the other dean of teaching and learning. Now, Chip, what year are you in?
This is 25 in the district.
25 in the district. Okay, Cassie, hello.
22 in the district?
22 in the district, and Mr. Angles?
25 in the district.
25 in the district. So thank you, all three of you. Combined 75 years of administrative work there. Appreciate your dedication and care. Thank you, Nate. All right, now the high school. So we have Tim Eastman, our principal, lead principal, Greg Mickelson, one of our deans, teaching and learning, Robert Kuhn, one of our deans of teaching and learning, Katie McDonald, one of our deans of teaching and learning, and Chad Yeager, our athletic director. Yep.
Greg is duck hunting.
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay. What year are you in the district?
My 8th in the district.
8th year in the district.
My first.
Robbie, first year in the district, all right. Katie, first year in the district.
Thank you.
And Chad, what year? 21 total, 6 in this role. So again, on behalf of the board, as Mr. Roethlisberger stated, and I'm sure all of the members would echo, and on behalf of central office, just want to thank you for the hours of dedication, the passion, the laughs. We've had some, good times working together and looking forward to many more years together, but just want to take a moment and say thank you and appreciate what you're doing for the students and the families here. So, round of applause for you. And now we're going to try to... Should we jump in with them? Board, maybe stand up and maybe scooch down into the middle. Thank you, folks in the audience for... Oh, okay, we're shaking hands. It's good. All right, so find an opening in the spot and we'll jump in there.
Yeah, we can just stand in the back. We're row 2. How's that? Oh, she's over here. Okay. You're good. You're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, board.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Hey, Chad. I know yours is missing a straw. Steal yours from Greg since you showed up.
I know principals typically do, and deans, if you've got something else to do, feel free to stay. Got a great presentation coming up with robotics. And Mr. Lark. Can't forget him.
Yeah, next on the agenda is the school board report, and I don't have anything for tonight. Does anybody else have anything? No. All right, so we'll move on to the. You sure? You got something?
I can't remember the name.
One of those buttons.
Okay. Marika, what was the name of it that we went to at the ISD, BBISD? It's when, yeah, it's a legislative program where they're going around the entire state from Lansing. The MASB is Michigan Association of School Board, and asking board members, principals, superintendents, what we would like to see the agenda should be for the new year as far as speaking, talking to, being involved with the legislators. So it's really nice, that they come to the ground roots and ask us, and we're going to be included in it along the process. So I think it's, very worthwhile, and it was very educational for me.
Thank you for attending that. As we talk about legislative and stuff, for those students who may be turning 18, right? If you haven't registered to vote, please do so. This will be our last board meeting before the election, right? So, there's a bunch of things to vote for in this next election. So please, if you haven't registered to vote, adults and students alike, I'm not gonna tell you who to vote for, but please vote and get out there and vote. So make your voices heard. All right. Anything else on school board report? All right, we'll kick it over to you guys for a robotics presentation. Thank you so much for coming in.
It's excellent to be here. Give me just 1 second. Okay, I think we're good. So, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I just want to thank you for this opportunity, for allowing the Wiredcat robotics team to come in and do a little presentation for you. I want to introduce a couple of the other mentors. I've got Ben and Mike, Colin, Elijah, this guy over here. None of this happens without them. And then the other people I'd like to introduce, of course, are the students, if everybody could rise up here, that's part of the Wirecats team. This is not the whole team, by the way. These are very intrepid volunteers that have come in to spend a little bit of time to talk to you about what it is to be on the team. So I consider these young ladies and gentlemen to be some of the best and brightest that the school has to offer, and a lot of that goes to, this group back here that just got recognized, so I really appreciate all the time and effort that you put in for the kids. And without further ado, this is a kind of a introduction video to what we do. This was made by one of our students. Yeah. Yep, sorry guys. Oops.
What is your favorite thing about the team?
My favorite part about the team is the social aspect. So getting to do something I enjoy, like building a robot with people I enjoy being around.
Why should people join robotics?
People should join robotics because it helps people to learn how to construct and put together certain electronics.
What is the value of robotics?
Value about robotics is the opportunities that come after robotics. So the amount of scholarships through this and the amount of learning experience going into, for instance, I want to go into engineering, and the amount of stuff I'm taking away from this is far more greater than something I could have maybe been doing, at home or by myself. And also just learning more interests and things that I like. So like the tools and the things that are present here that you'll never see, elsewhere is just incredible.
What is your favorite thing about competitions?
One of my favorite things about the competitions is definitely the energy. It is fun and exciting, and it is interesting to see the teamwork throughout all other teams and see the unique ways that they built their robots and compare their ways with ours.
Why is electrical important, and what have you learned about electrical being on the robotics team?
So why electrical is important is without electrical, none of the components would work. And it has to be perfect because without it, if a part breaks, we would not know where the problem is unless it's not organized perfectly.
So what we've learned on electrical is pretty much that if we do anything wrong with it, if we don't make all the connections correctly and make sure everything's secured down onto the robot, then stuff's gonna be just dangling everywhere, and it's just a mess, and stuff starts breaking really easily after that.
So next, we're going to run through, they're going to say a few things and go from there.
Would you like me to step over to the microphone? All right, so what we want to show you is kind of a sample of what a competition would look like. So every year we have 2 or 3 competitions. There's regular district competitions and then state. So what you'll see is a 2-minute 30-second match where our robot competes multiple times a day against random other robots and alliances. So what you'll see is it's very high energy, although it might be hard to hear. It's very loud in all the auditoriums and gyms. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a very draining day because it goes from like 8 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon, full on, just full energy. So what we want to show you, and so we can start it, is a sample of our match. So we are the top left. If you look, there's a robot that's moving in the corner picking up a ball. So we have 15 seconds to pre-program a robot to do what we want it to do. So we have it drive, pick up a ball, shoot, and then after that 15 seconds, we then have 2 minutes to drive the robot around. You'll see on the far left there's a row of drivers, and then those are the people who are on a controller driving the robot around. So this year our competition was we were picking up all these balls, shooting them into the top of the hub, and then we got points for each ball that we made in. So it's very a sport-like thing. The crowd is cheering. It's very energetic. Then skip forward real quick. So most of the match will look like that, balls picking up and things like that. But once we get to the last 30 seconds, a new element of the game appears. This year we had to climb up these monkey bars type things and get a robot all the way off the ground. So if you look in the top left corner, you'll see our robot. It's climbing up off the ground. We have a big mechanism up top on this robot. And what it does is it swings over and it climbs up. And it's a really, really hard challenge to engineer and figure out, but it's one of the greatest part of the teams is just all the challenges. So yeah, I'll let Garrett talk about more stuff that we do.
Let me just put this up. Good evening, members of the board. So, what do we do on the team? We do a lot in a very little time. We're in the new challenge in early January and only have about 7 to 8 weeks to design, build, program, test, break a bit, repair, break it a little bit more, improve, and hopefully it'll be ready for a competition. Or so we like to think. We build the robot from the ground up every year. First, we like to go over the rules of the game. It is very important to understand what the game rules are so we can develop a strategy, and that strategy dictates what the robot design will be and how we will play the game. We figure out what tasks we will do and then how we'll do these tasks. We break into functional groups. These groups are design, build, programming, electrical, scouting, and multimedia. Each groups work very closely with one another to determine the bot is perfect like this. So let's take a little closer look at each of these groups. First, let's take a look at the design and build group from my good friend Andrew. And I have to excuse myself, I have to go present my Eagle Scout project.
Thanks, Garrett. Well, being part of the design team and the build team is probably the main thing that you think of when you think of robotics. We're responsible for designing and, well, building the robot. And to design the robot and build it, we use a CAD software named Onshape that we use to design parts that we get 3D printed by separate companies, if necessary. We also learn how to use different tools at hand, like power tools. We use milling machines, industrial saws, and many different type of tools, as well as like welding and just lots of different tools. The design and build team also work hand in hand with the electrical team, which Dom can tell you more about.
All right, thanks, Andrew. If design and build is the body of the robot, then electricity is its lifeblood. Members of the electrical team are responsible for designing the layout of all the electrical components and the pneumatic components of the robot. Along with this, we make sure that all the wiring and tubing connections are secure. Reliability of all these components is one of the keys to winning matches and competing at our highest level. Electrical team members work closely with both the design, build, and the programming teams. For more on programming, I'll turn it over to Ava.
Thank you, Dom. Programming is the brains of the robot. Without programming, the robot would just be a bunch of metal and plastic. It might look nice, but it wouldn't do anything. The programming language that we use is Java. Java is a very popular programming language and is used in a wide variety of applications, such as programming a robot, building a website, and developing mobile apps. The programming team works very closely with the electrical team, but the Wired Cats isn't just about designing, building, and programming. There is much more to the team. Izzy?
Thank you, Ava. So the marketing and multimedia team does many of the behind-the-scenes activities. These include photographing and videoing our meetings and competitions, making fun videos showcasing all of the aspects of the team, public speaking, working on award submissions, writing thank you letters to our sponsors, and posting updates on our social media. Being on the marketing and multimedia team is a lot of fun and it really shows us how to use our creativity. Hey, Sebastian, can you tell us about scouting?
Absolutely. Scouting is the process of analyzing our opponents and allies to determine their strengths and weaknesses. So we use the data that is gathered by our team members during the matches to inform our drive team on how we should adapt our tactics based on the teams we are facing and the teams we are competing with. If you're interested in stuff like strategic analysis, mobile app design, or becoming a spreadsheet power user, then the Wired Cats definitely has stuff to offer. Izzy, could you talk about other reasons why people should join the Wired Cats?
Thanks, Sebastian. There are many reasons to join the Wired Cats. Some of the obvious reasons is to gain technical knowledge, learn to use tools, and build a cool robot. But there are many more reasons. Being on the team reinforces what we learn in school. We get to put practical use of the many things we learn in classrooms. We learn troubleshooting skills and how to problem solve. Each group totally relies on the others to get their part done, so the whole team benefits. We get to socialize with old friends and make new ones on the team. We get to network with other teams as well. There are also lots of scholarship opportunities. The list of benefits goes up and on. We will now be performing a quick demonstration of our robot. Before we get into that, our robot did make the top 10% best robots in Michigan. And one thing that FRC does that's just a common thing is each team likes to make buttons for the other teams to go around and collect. And we decided to be weird, so we did ours on poker chips, and we have enough for everyone on the board if you would like one.
Drive it very slowly. We'll see if this works.
Alright, so if you noticed, there's a motor thing that was handed around earlier. I think it's next to Mr. Fleener, and that's what we use to drive the robot. So on all sides of the robot, you'll kind of notice there's 4 of them. What they do is it allows us to move in any direction at any time, which is a very kind of neat thing that we can do that stands out from other teams. And then another thing we have on a robot is a vision system. So the robot will automatically line itself up before we take a shot. All right. Yeah. Well, another part about robotics is sometimes things don't work. So what it usually does in the competitions, but I'll turn it around so you can see. It looks like a camera up on the top. It's kind of a black little box. What that does is it shoots out a, well, there it goes. You good. So that's called a limelight. What it does is it can sense kind of reflective tape. So up on that board, we have reflective tape. So what it does is it automatically aligns itself, and that's how we can always shoot properly.
Move closer.
So if I drive around randomly, turn it a little bit, it'll automatically line itself up no matter where we are at. And the carpet makes it a little jiggly, but this is how we always shoot, and we're always able to be accurate and consistent when we're driving around. So these are all stuff that's done in programming. It's a long, hard work for all the guys who are in programming and Ava. But yeah, there's a lot of components that go into it. Oh yeah, you want to feed the ball in? So,
I'm gonna need somebody to block.
All right, so this year we had to suck in the balls, as you saw, and that's how, as you can see. So we have pneumatic pistons that push out the ball collector. Then we have some motors that help spin the wheels on it, and that's how we're able to collect everything. And we were actually very efficient this year with that. Out of the teams in Michigan, we were the 10th in the state for shooting, which is a very high number because Michigan's the most competitive out of any state, all states in the U.S. For robotics. So it's something that we take pride in, and yeah, it's.
There's 400, last year there was 476 teams in the state of Michigan.
You wanna try shooting?
Just do it.
That's what he's there for.
Okay.
Just an A, yeah.
Yeah, there's an example of a shooting. All right. A little bit.
You wanna explain that?
All right, so this was from our state tournament. No, not state tournament. Gull Lake. Sorry. So this is from Gull Lake. So every year we have 2 competitions before the state competitions. This was one of them. So during the day we have about like 14 matches, and then out of those 14 we get ranked, and then we get signed up, or not signed up, but aligned with rankings throughout the day, and then they have like the finals tournament. So they take the top teams from that day. They are not randomly, but they're selected partners based on how well you did, and you can choose who you want based on your ranking. So this was after we were paired with Gull Lake and one other team from another school. I don't quite remember. Marshall? Maybe Marshall. So it was three robots versus 3 robots in a bracket tournament style. So we went all the way through, and we won the whole tournament, which is a pretty big deal because Michigan has some of the best competition, and it's always great because it feels like a state tournament or sports win. It's just so much hard work that makes its way, and yeah, something we're proud of.
If anybody has any questions for these ladies and gentlemen up here, please feel free to ask.
We ended up being ranked 38th in the state last year, and we qualified for Worlds, but we had decided early in the season not to go. It was in Houston, and it was the week following the state tournament, so we would have been in Saginaw for 4 days, had to be in Houston 3 days later, and then another 4 days in Houston, and then back home. So basically, these team members would have been out of school for 2 weeks, and we're a volunteer corps for the mentors and coaches, and that adds up, Yeah.
Any questions about the team or the robot?
This is the robot. Oh, sorry. This is the
Go ahead,
robot from last year, and you're going to get a new challenge. You said in like March or
Yeah.
or
So
when the
every
season
year,
starts?
January, they send out a brand new competition, a brand new field
get it
with
in
different
January.
components on it.
Okay.
So this robot, we can't even use any parts from it in our next year, and we're not allowed to. So it's going to be a full new construction from ground up, and it'll be a brand new challenge, and that's kind of the part every year that's the most challenging, but it's the
Yeah.
engineering process of working through
Where
that.
do you go to physically like work on your robot during the season?
Trimation, kind of it's down in Mattawan. It's they sponsor us, and they give us a good portion of their area to have us house our building stuff and things like that. So they allow us to use like their milling machines and all their very large hardware, expensive hardware that is in a professional field that we get to use as high schoolers, which we're very grateful for. And as long as students design it and we build it, they can take like these big metal parts right here, and we send them our CAD drawings, which is computer designed. We send them those, and they'll cut them out for those really big, complicated things. And that's something that we're really grateful for, and we're glad to have them.
And then when do you guys learn like the Java, like the ones of you that are programming and like to use the CAD? Like where do you learn that? As part of this, or?
A lot of the times it's student teaching or graduates from the team teaching new incoming students. So Elijah back here, he graduated 2 years ago? 3 years ago. 4. Oh, sorry. Several years ago. Over the summer, the people who have interest in programming and want to learn about it, they work with him, and they can learn foundation in it and start to grow so they can carry on the team and, I guess, carry on the legacy of our team.
What kind of time commitment do you students put in during the week on the robotics team? I mean,
So until January, we usually just do kind of a once a week sort of thing, 3 hours, one night a week. But once January hits and the competition actually gets sent out, we usually do about 2 nights for the weekdays, which is usually 6 to 9. And then we have Saturdays from 9 to 3. So it's a big time commitment. There's a lot that goes into this. Sometimes there's nights that go to 10, 11, as long as the mentors are willing to stay and the students. But yeah, it's a big time commitment. A lot of students, they're brainstorming things at school, at home, trying to remember things and think of new ways to do the challenge.
and then one competition question on this particular robot: when it shoots the ball for the basket, how much of that's driver dependent? And how much does a robot set its own distance, figure its own arc? How do you do that?
Once we drive, we kind of have a sweet spot, I guess you could say. So it's like 10 feet away from the hoop, the challenge. Once we get after that, we have like a 15 feet radius or area around there that is our sweet spot. And once we do that and we have the robot kind of aligned, it automatically aligns itself based on that. The camera up there, it senses the distance of that. And then our programmers, they made an equation basically that figures out the shooting speeds and the speeds of both the wheels on the motor to get the correct arc into that. So once we get into that spot, we press a button and it just shoots and it goes in.
So the driver puts it in the sweet spot and the machine does the rest.
Oh yeah.
Cool.
Thank you all for being a part of this, right? My son had an opportunity to do it a little bit last year, and he really, really loved it. Hopefully he'll do it again. I know he struggles with time commitment stuff. But I will say, though, that one of the interesting things for the board, one of the interesting things about this program is that technically it's just really loosely affiliated with the school. They use our brain, this kids' brains, that's the resources, right? That's what we provide as the district. But most everything else comes from the volunteers, the mentors, which I can't thank you guys enough for spending that time with these young folks to do that. You know, we need more engineers, we need more mentors, we need everything, right? So thank you for all that you do. And I know sometimes it can be hard trying to mitigate, because none of you work for the district either, right? So it can be challenging sometimes to try to understand the rules and regulations of students being off campus and going to things. And you know, thanks for jumping through all those hoops and doing the things that you do for our students. And anything we can do to help support you, and you know, please reach out. I'm sure I don't have to give Chad's name out, but Chad will help you, right? But as student activities, right? I mean, that's really where that lies. And it's been a really successful program. I mean, you guys can tell me, how long have you been doing it? And you've had.
We've completed 8 seasons. This will be our 9th season.
Ben, how long has it been since since Matthew graduated? I want to say it was like
4 years.
Yeah. So.
He started. He was in the beginning class as a freshman with the team.
So you know, Ben stuck around for 4. You know, neither of you have kids in the program still, right? So. Thank you for continuing on and continuing the legacy. Like, I forget who said, I think it was you who said that, you know, keeping the tradition alive, and that's important. So thank you all for what you do. It's awesome.
We have been a successful team.
Very much.
In 8 years, there's been 6 state competitions. The pandemic slowed things down a little bit. We've qualified all but 1 year for state competition with robots we built, and we've qualified for Worlds 3 times. We've gone twice, so we've been successful. So it's a lot of fun. It's a challenge, and it's fun passing along information, and I learn from it every day too. So that's the other great aspect about it, because you get to learn from the kids, because they're smarter at some things than I am, you know. So, but just ideas and critical thinking and other things that come into play. It's a pleasure to do it, you know.
And I don't want to take up a whole lot of time, but Mike was saying about how successful the team is on the field, but I want to also address how successful the team is off the field. You know, every team member comes away with something. One of the pitches I always say is, you know, you'll get far more out of the program than what you put into it. We have had students go on to college because of the program. We've had students that get scholarships because of the program. Elijah, you know, this young guy, he's been with the team almost since the inception. Not only, you know, computer science, but he's also works at the place that we meet, because they saw what he could do and said, hey, you know, we want the best, and we see that. And we've had 3 students out of the program get hired into the company. And so, you know, so yes, success on the field is one thing, that's a lot of fun, but it's their success, you know, during and after school, and you know, beyond high school, that is really what the program is about. And that's where the true value of the program lies.
one of the statements that first thing says it's the only sport that everybody can turn pro in.
That's true.
Are you financially supported strictly from sponsors that you all get?
That and Michigan Department of Education has a nice grant for all the teams in the state
Okay.
as well.
Oh, okay.
But if we relied upon that grant, we wouldn't exist.
Yes, you would. I had the pleasure of really getting to know a lot of the team and the coaches and the mentors last year. I think when things started cranking back up, went to a couple of the events, and Mr. Larner got to one. The video didn't do it justice. I mean, it is intense. Just was super proud of you guys, the team, and echo what Ted and the board members have been saying about the commitment. And we're just excited about the future, your futures, not just of the Wildcats, but beyond Mattawan. It's just great to hear these stories about how it's impacting. That's why we're here. So thank you for your time tonight and away from homework and studying, I'm sure, right? Okay, you guys don't look like you're in a hurry to leave, but if there's no more questions, I do want to thank you and looking forward to the season.
Thanks a lot for coming in. I appreciate it. I know it's a lot to bring that robot in, and it's a lot for you guys to make time to come in, so we do appreciate it. It's great to see it.
We really appreciate the opportunity to show off, so it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Appreciate it. You're not going to offend any of us if you decide to leave, so just so you know. Nope, feel free. Nope, you're good.
Did everybody get a poker chip that wanted a poker chip?
Yep. Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And I have like another poker chip from them too. It's fun. So as they're cleaning up, I guess I'll give it to Jay. I don't know if he's moving towards the microphone or if you're.
You're gonna do Jay, you ready to follow robotics with data? Yes.
We're gonna set everything up. We're a little disappointed that we have to follow the robotics.
I can't wait to the things you show me, Jay.
I know, right? Yeah.
I'm excited.
Nothing more exciting than some academic data.
After a pandemic.
Yeah.
But we will, just really quick. I did have the opportunity to go and see the Wildcats at the state finals this past year. And if you've never been to an event before, it's really hard to explain. I mean, we're talking, 120 teams. There's probably 5,000 people in attendance.
Actually,
Many of the
no,
kids are
25,000 people.
How many?
25,000.
25,000 people. I know the arena at Saginaw Valley State University was jam-packed. I mean, they have a separate facility for all the build stations, and it's like separate garages for every single team, and kids running around in costumes. I mean, that happens a lot. So it's quite an event, and I would really encourage it if you ever get a chance to go. Very exciting.
And one of the things they touched on a little bit was the scouting piece.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of the kids are involved in that, and that's a big reason. If I remember correctly, it's a big reason for the success of your program, is the amount of kids that sit in the stands and watch all the other teams and take notes about how they do it, what their stats are, and then because there's a portion that they talked about where they get to choose who they want to work with later on, and if you don't do a good job scouting, you could really end up with not the best team. And you're not necessarily looking always just for the best robot. You're looking for one that complements yours, right? So that you can build a whole team, which is a really cool life skill to learn. Is not just looking for the superstar, but looking for the one that's going to help you shine, be a whole team. So it's a great skill that you guys are teaching them. So thank you.
If you're ever interested in that, talk to.
Can we just hide in that closet?
Yeah, for the most part.
How did you know I needed help? Can you see it? You're like, let her struggle for a minute.
Tools that we use out of that actually have been examples that other teams want to use across the whole state.
So it's really amazing work.
At one of our competitions last year, they were doing online commentary. They were streaming it online, and the commentators took our data and used it to help inform their commentary.
It's on ESPN3.
It's great. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit of information about our district key performance indicators. Jenny Ross-Klingel, our Director of Curriculum, and I are going to kind of tag team this presentation. I know that there was a lot of discussion, kind of questions about what are some of our key performance indicators. And go ahead and we'll click through this. Yeah. All right. We want to focus on state level assessment data, district level assessment data, a behavioral measure, and then a social emotional measure. Those are the core areas where we focus. What we're looking at as individual growth. Just you can see up at the top, looking at star reading, which is a district level measure, third, 5th, and 8th grade, our M-STEP and PSAT, 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade, and then SAT. Those are both for reading and math. Our behavioral measure is around attendance. We're going to dig into all of those things here in a little bit. And then social emotional measures, utilizing some of our panorama data. And I know we've only been doing that for 2 years, and that really hasn't been necessarily a focal point when looking specifically at data. But one of the things that we wanted to kind of target as a discussion area that we've had within our district school improvement team is talking about students' ability to be able to self-regulate. So that's one of the things we want to focus on. All right, so let's get into some state level assessment data. And I know sometimes as educators it's not our favorite piece of data to look at because it is a one-time snapshot of student performance. However, it is a critical snapshot, and this is an area that school districts across the state they're measured, and families will take looks at schools and look at individual performance based on this particular performance. So what we wanted to be able to show you today is just really the trend over the last 8 years. So if you look at 2014 to last year to 2022, I'll note the break is the break from MEEP to the M-STEP. Okay, so we're really focused on 2014 on. You can see from the COVID year where no M-STEP was taken, there is no data point there, but from really launching into that first year with COVID up to last year, there was a little bit of an uptick. Over the past 10 years, you do see a little bit of a downward trend overall. So we're just kind of noting a couple things as we go through today. Again, this is M-STEP 5th grade. Over that same time period, okay, you can see a little bit of a downward trend from the 21 to the 22 school year. Overall a slight decline over the past 8 years. Now I'm just going to, to answer the break is that in the 2018-2019 school year, the state moved away from the M-STEP ELA and moved everything to the PSAT 8. So now all of our 8th grade students take the PSAT 8 for their evidence-based reading and writing assessment. Same with math.
So this is star reading. At Mattawan, we use star reading as our, for star reading and math as our universal screening tool. And when you're looking at this, you have 3rd, 5th, and 8th for the end of the year in 2020, 2021, and 2022. As you can see, there's some NAs because, once again, we had the pandemic. A few things to note on this. When you see, for example, 68.4%, we're looking at proficiency. We're talking about students who are at or above benchmark. For STAR, that's the 40th percentile. So 68.4% of 3rd graders in the spring of 2022 were proficient in reading. So that's how you read this. Some schools, we just adopted this some schools were using it
years prior, but we're just collecting data for the last 3 years, so that's why it looks, you can see those COVID years in there.
And that was recent, sorry to interrupt, but that was recently where we switched to Star, because I remember we did Discovery and some other
Yes.
stuff before that, right? And they didn't,
So,
and it was a
so-
strategic move that you guys did to
So
get the
in-
whole
yeah.
district on one train, or one testing.
In the 20,
path.
in the 2021 school year, we had, discussion with our district school improvement team about moving towards an individual screener. Some buildings were using NWEA, some were using STAR, some weren't using anything. And that was part of the expectation that the state had, as far as we had to report utilizing one universal screener, kindergarten through 8th grade, on student performance. So that really kind of forced us to kind of move in that direction, start using, one tool to be able to provide data and look, specifically at some similar types of data. What did I do there? Oh, sorry. All right, so jump into math. Again, and I should have led this, is that this is also proficiency data. So, we are looking at the percentage of students that were proficient on the 3rd grade math M-STEP. So approximately, you're right around 63 to 64% of students. A slight uptick from 2021, but again, I never look at data with just 1 to 2 data points. I'm always looking at 3 or more, so I can see what kind of trend do we actually have, okay? Again, you can see 5th grade, slightly down, but if you look kind of, drawing that line from 2014 to 2022, you have a pretty flat line. Couple above, couple below. And then 8th grade. And little uptick last year. If you look at overall performance from 2014 to 2022, you would see an upward trend. Again, you do have a break with the assessment that was used. And then here's some of our SAT data. So I got to remember all the colors that are going on here. So the very top line, okay, is our evidence-based reading and writing. And you can see a high level of proficiency amongst our students. We did have a nice uptick last year from the 2021 to the 2022 school year. However, there is, a touch of a downward trend that we're just noting, and it's important for us to look at that and, use that, kind of the truth in the data to say, okay, what are some things that we need to be thinking about when we're looking at the things that we want to implement at our buildings in order to improve our practice. And then the top line, the orange, is our mathematics score. Right, for the SAT. Okay. A little bit of a downward trend, right? Kind of flattened out from 2021 to 21-22. Again, just, good information for us to start from, to start really digging in and having conversations around our data.
What year were those optional? Remember this SAT, they didn't all have to take.
Yeah, good question.
One big blur in my brain.
Right.
And I can't remember if it was 19 or 20.
Yeah, so what you can see on there, it's kind of hard to see on the slide, but you can see that there is a gap where it goes 2018, 2019, and then 2021. So the year that, the year COVID started was completely eliminated, okay? We were not taking state mandated assessments at that point in time. They all rolled over to the next year, and they were technically optional, all right, per the state, for kids to be able to come in. However, last year, everything was back on track. So, and as a school district, we still have, held the expectation that you needed to be able to complete the Michigan Merit Exam at some point in time. Yep, ACT to the SAT, yep.
So same, we had star reading, here's the star math for 3rd, 5th, and 8th, remembering that to be proficient, the benchmark is 40th percentile or above. So you can just look at that and see where we're growing, where we need to kind of focus in a little bit deeper, but just remembering that we triangulate that data. We don't look at one data point, we put it all together.
That 40th percentile or above, like comparing them to all children that take that star assessment?
Mhm.
And that's like by lots of districts nationally?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. So we just covered some of our state level data. We covered a little bit of our district universal screener data. Let's talk a little bit about some of these behavioral measures.
Sorry, one more question before
Yes,
we move
go ahead.
on. Just while we were on the academic side, I was looking to see if it was in here a little deeper, and I just didn't, if it is, do you show how we fare against anybody else? Or and if you
I
don't,
have that, yeah, I don't have that with me.
Okay.
But that could be something with some of the tools that we have to be able to show comparison data.
Yeah, I guess I would just want to echo that as I looked through this, preparing in the agenda. You know, it's only data, but if you look at trends, right, I'm not super excited, but I need to understand what's the trend state, nationally, regionally. So I think for this data, to me, it's a point out of water unless I know, hey, if as a state, they didn't dip the way we dipped, why are we dipping different? So I feel like for the whole picture, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, that can absolutely be something that, we can put together and then forward that to the board just to pull all of those pieces together.
Okay.
All right, so behavioral measures. One of the metrics that we thought would be important is to talk a little bit about attendance. We know that if students are in attendance at school, they have more access to learning, and with the more access to learning, the better opportunity for student growth and performance. So what you're looking at is this is the percentage of students that were considered chronically absent across the district. And chronically absent means 10% or more enrolled days. So there might be a situation where a student came in January, they're only here for half of the year, they're here for 90 school days, and so their 10% would be that 90. Again, this takes into account whether a student was ill for the day, or they were, taken out of school for any sort of school business, any sort of personal, activity that they might be out of school for. Because ultimately, a day out of school is a day out of school. What the reason is really irrelevant. It's one less day of access to learning. So what you see is obviously an upward trend, especially in the 2022 school year. And probably a lot of that is because of the amount of time that we were in school, right? And then kids being quarantined. And so students that were out of school that did not have immediate access to their classroom would have acquired, obviously a considerable number of days. So we're expecting that after this year, that number will go down significantly. Obviously that's just kind of our assumption based on the fact that it was 20% last year. Again, ultimately, if we can have students in school more, we're going to have more opportunities, more touch points to be able to impact, how students are performing in school.
So that 2022, 20% is just the second half of the school year last year?
No, so the year indicates the springtime. So the 2022 is last school year. Throughout the entire year, 20% of our students missed more than 10% of the days that they were enrolled. We thought it was important to be able to show, kind of the years before COVID to give you kind of a context of where did a lot of our students fall. It looks like it was in that 11 to 10% range, roughly. The 2020 year where it says 13%, that's when COVID started. This does not take into account the fact that schools were shut down all of the, it's really just the days all before that and the percentage of students that were missing school.
Okay, so when we look at SEL, social emotional learning, we are now using Panorama. That's a survey that students take twice a year, and we just started using it last year. So looking at this as part of our data, we are looking at percent favorable. And this is a little bit different because it basically means, based on some questions, it's the percentage, how students chose, if they chose a more positive response versus a negative response, and that's what percent favorable means. So you see it's emotion regulation on here for elementary, along with secondary. And I'm not sure how much they've talked about Panorama here, not that much. So the topics that students are taking this survey on include emotional regulation, self-efficacy, self-management, social awareness, and supportive relationships. So they take this survey in the classroom, and compiling all these student responses, they just help us support the students' growth in these areas as well. So you can see for elementary and secondary, and based on all those topics, those areas, this was the one that that had the lower score. So definitely emotional regulation is the area where we have an opportunity for growth for our students. Just like Jay was saying with behavior, kids that can self-regulate are ones that are very engaged in school and have a higher chance of being successful. They have better attendance, fewer behavior incidents, less likely to fail academically. So that is our focus, is working on the SEL component.
How do students take that test in elementary? How do they tell you that they're emotionally sound, or tell me a little bit about that process?
Can I read one of the questions for you? I thought
Yeah.
this might come up. It might give you a good, and Kim Porco's in charge of Panorama, so she can also answer specific questions, but I thought it'd be interesting if someone asked that question, what an example looks like. So under emotional regulation, here's one example of a question. When things go wrong for you, how calm are you able to stay? Extremely calm, quite calm, somewhat calm, slightly calm, not calm at all. So the majority of kids kind of scored in the lower response area for that. So that's typically how students are the questions that they see. Now this is more 3-5. The younger ones, the teachers need to take that for them, because as you can imagine, having a first grader take that is not probably going to happen.
So are we saying then that in the early in the early elementary, that the teachers filling those things out
By observation.
by observation,
Yes.
or are they asking the students the questions?
No, by observation.
Okay, so it's the teacher's perception of that student and their ability. Okay.
Up until second grade. And also when they take this in the secondary, they're also able to leave comments and put more information in as well. So, and this is just taken twice a year.
So now that you have all that data, what? Oh, go ahead. Yes.
Before we move on from the data, can I take it? I just noticed the outlier of all the way back to the STAR reading assessments of most of these numbers tend to be like percentile-wise a little higher than the 8th grade STAR reading. Our 8th graders, the proficiency was only 53 and 51%. And just wondered if you guys had any thoughts about that. It kind of really stood out to me as a number that was lower than most of the others on all of the assessments. Even the 8th grade STAR math was a little bit lower too, but not that. I mean, it was still, I think, in the 60s, 70 percentile were proficient, or percentage of proficiency, so.
Yeah, so what you don't see is, we're still taking, the assessment and MSTAP, all of these pieces of data at the 4th, 6th, and 7th grade level as well. This is where our vertical teamwork is really going to be prevalent, is that, identifying these areas that maybe jump out and start to create the inquiry. All right, I'm wondering about. And that's when we get our teachers in the room to sit down and say, okay, let me put this data in front of you based on some of these wonders that they start to create, and have them start engaging with that type of data to really decipher what actually is happening. Are there things that we need to be spending more time on from a curricular standpoint? Or maybe it's, we need to start looking at how we're delivering instruction. So, really this is just a starting point for us to say, okay, we wanted to focus on the initial entry of the M-STEP, which is 3rd grade, and then the what I would say is the critical exit points for state assessment. 5th grade leaving our building, 8th grade leaving our building, and then the SAT at 11th grade, which is, kind of the Super Bowl of it all, right? So what we're looking at is this is a very broad overview, but we need to look deeper with our administrators, with our teachers, at all of these pieces, because we'll even look at it and say one of the first things that jumped out to us is, yeah, I can look at maybe some of this reading data from STAR, but it doesn't necessarily match up with the percentage of students that are proficient on the M-STEP. So what's the difference there, right? What's going on? That's where we start to have these conversations about, what is happening and what does this data actually mean? So again, we're kind of showing you some entry points. As of right now, we talked a little bit about the trends. We saw, some upward trends. We saw some downward trends. Whether that's over the last 3-4 years, over the last 8. We want to establish a goal, right? We're trying to establish a goal, and we're talking about student proficiency as really being that focal point for a goal. A lot of times, people will ask for, well, I want to see how the 3rd graders grew from 3rd to 4th to 5th to 6th. And that's good. That's important information to know that groups of students are growing. Quite honestly, all students are probably going to grow every single year. Some are going to grow more than others. But ultimately, what we're measured on is what percentage of our students are proficient, right? Families want to know, are our school districts preparing our students? And this is just one of the metrics that they use, is to determine whether or not we're preparing students for career and college readiness. And so we're looking at, on our state metrics, looking at a 2% growth. 2% growth over the course of the year in both our state and local assessments. And using all these data components, 3rd, 5th, 8th, 11th, for all of it, it's hard to say, well, did we make 2% growth? It's more of like a preponderance of evidence. Are we seeing that in most of these areas, we made 2% growth? Because ultimately, we have to start making that 2% growth down, at the kindergarten level, to the 1st, to the 2nd, to the 3rd, if we're going to start seeing that upward trend again, so that we're not spending so much time catching everybody up, right? That we're building from year to year so that we can start to see us getting back to where 70 to 80% of our students are demonstrating proficiency on these high stakes, assessments. So again, 2% growth, and what we're looking at, as I mentioned, 1 year is not an indicator of a trend. What we're looking at is, what are we going to see over the next 3 to 5? If we see 2% growth over the next 3 to 5 years, and we see a 10% increase across all of our state assessments, our local assessments, that would be considered significant success, I would say. Behavioral measures, all right, so that's our attendance component. We're looking at a 3% decrease, all right, in the percentage of students that miss more than 10% of days enrolled in a year, all right? That's a starting point for us, given the fact that I said that 20% of our students miss 10% of their days. So again, if you run that calculation, that's 18 days of school. 18 days of school is a pretty significant amount of time missed, for a student in a year, and we had 20% of our students do that. So what we're looking for, coming out of COVID, hoping that, obviously with not the quarantine expectations, that number is going to decline pretty significantly. We think 3% is a good starting point, and then we reevaluate that from year to year after we see what this current school year would look like. And then again, kind of along those similar lines, a 2% increase in students' ability to self-regulate based on Panorama student survey data. Again, preponderance of evidence, kind of looking at, collectively, are our students feeling as though that they're able to regulate their emotions when maybe things aren't going the way that they want them to. So then the question is always, well, how are we going to get there, right? How are we going to get there? We can talk about it, but we have to actually put some action into the plan. And what I note here, our buildings have done a phenomenal job of really implementing and launching our professional learning community culture, and we want to continue to grow that. I mean, we are really just launching into what I would say is year 2, and we've put a lot of time and energy around building that culture district-wide because of these folks right here. And I do want to note that I listed on here the target and the goal in connection to the strategic plan of where that would fit in, right? That this work isn't just something that's randomly thrown around. It is directly related to the goals within our strategic plan. I mentioned about vertical team data digs, right? Beginning those conversations. I mean, that needs to happen amongst the teacher groups, at grade levels within departments. It might be M-STEP data, it might be SAT data, STAR, it could be their own common assessment data that they're bringing to the table, having a conversation around, hey, I had a student or my student struggled on this, Algebra 1 assessment. All right, let's have a conversation around it. Start looking into those things and working with their colleagues to talk about what are the foundational skills that maybe students are missing so that they can make progress in that area. So that needs to happen, kind of collectively, where we're having the discussion as a team to find out what are the building blocks that we need to put in place in order to make progress. We can't expect one person to do everything, in their classroom with, 20 to 30 kids all in one year, that they're going to close that gap all by themselves. That's where that team effort comes into play, about where do we need to focus our time and attention on what we're teaching, right, at each grade level, and then really digging into the, how are we going about teaching it to ensure that all students are learning. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Was I hogging the space? Go
That's
ahead.
all right.
You want to go?
I'm like, you're doing a great job.
No,
That's
go
right.
ahead.
So development and implementation of MTSS district-wide, that's also one of our goals district-wide for this year as well. And it kind of just goes back to the implementing PLC culture with fidelity. People are very laser focused on our PD days, which we're grateful for having access to those days in the new academic calendar for the collaborative learning time. And they are focused on looking at what is truly essential, especially in this time period when we know we have to accelerate learning. So we have to focus on truly what is essential for our students to learn, letting some other things go that are not, and focusing on how to teach with rigor and relevance. And then to look at some data, always what you do with the data, not just having the data. See, flies are finding me everywhere we go, Kim. They're finding me. What we do with that data in offering support for students that need additional help to become proficient. Remembering that MTSS stands for multi-tiered system of supports, and it's a whole preventative framework that involves academic, SEL, and behavior data. We don't want to just concentrate on one piece. It's the whole framework. So we're continuing to focus on that to help ensure high levels of learning for all students.
And you might remember some of the presentations about Power Half Hour, those types of pieces. Those are the things that we're continuing to build and refine, throughout the district. One of the things that we were able to do, that the board approved last year, which was fantastic, is, the implementation of some new curricular resources for math. And actually, over the past, really 2 years, we've adopted new math curriculum K-12. And so, some of that's just getting our hands on those resources, really taking those resources and aligning it to our instructional practice and our essential standards about what we're teaching and how we're going about delivering it. So, that's an exciting opportunity that I know our buildings, greatly appreciate, our teachers greatly appreciate, is, having those new resources, to help guide their practice and how they're going about teaching versus having to worry about, do I have the resources to be able to do what I need to do that's best for kids.
And actually, I just worked with a math team on Thursday, and they said, this is what our focus is. We know it's truly essential, because they defined that the year before. Now we're taking this resource, not teaching page by page by page, but using it to deliver instruction, okay, based on what they defined as essential. So that's something that's new and exciting for them. So that's a big focus. I think you actually
Yeah,
had the last one.
Yeah, and then really, as you know, this year we were able to launch and we began an initial implementation of Capturing Kids' Hearts, which is very exciting. Really hitting on not just some of the behavioral goals, right? Because we know that if a student feels connected at school, they're more likely to attend, right? Which will have a direct impact on attendance, which is going to have a direct impact on student achievement and performance, as well as being able to work. The more we're connecting with students, their ability to self-regulate emotion, because they know that they have somebody that they can lean on and that they can go to. There's also this is a direct connection to some of our staff components as well. I know a lot of the feedback that we've received from staff is how powerful the launch of Capturing Kids' Hearts was, and just the connection amongst their colleagues. So we're very excited, by the leadership of our buildings and kind of taking, the process, right? The process of Capturing Kids' Hearts and making it part of their building culture. That's it. What questions do we have?
A clarifying question. You talked about 2% on various actions. Did I understand that it's 2% a year, so from 3 to 5 it'll be 10?
Correct. Yeah,
Is that what you
our
were
goal is
telling me?
2% per year.
Okay,
Yes.
2% per year.
I'll probably need to talk to my wife about this, because my farmer's math isn't working out so well. But I want to be cautious when we talk about percent improvement on percentages. Because, and it's nothing negative, right? It's just the closer you get to 100, the harder it is to move that needle from 95 to 96, because there's less room for error, right? So I don't want to cut yourself short when we start talking about improvements. Because if my math was right, Jen's gonna kill me. If my math was right, there's 4,000. That's just for roughly right, 4,000 students in the district. If 20% of them missed more than 20 days or more than whatever the day was, that'd be 800 students, right? That missed quite a bit of time. To move that to 18% means that you're going to have to move the needle on 80 kids. So 80 to 720, 720 out of 4,000 gets you to 18%. That's really a 10% improvement from the year before, because you had 800 students that were absent, and then you got 720 that were absent the next year. 80 divided by 800 is 10, right? So I want to make sure that we don't kill ourselves or feel bad if we're measuring percentages of improvement on percentages, moving percentage points,
Yeah.
right? Am I close?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Am I
I
doing
can
something
jump on
wrong? I
that.
feel like I'm doing something wrong, but
I agree with you, but I would say at the percentages we're at, that's too far down the line to worry about.
Okay.
My personal
That's
math
what I was gonna
opinion.
comment on, is-
You know, when you're
is-
looking at 40 and 50%, stay
is-
with the 2% until you are at that 80 to 100.
Okay.
That's where it gets
That makes
harder
sense.
to move that
I just-
needle, but right now where you're at,
Right.
I would
Okay.
agree.
If we were above 80, I would say 1% would be appropriate, right? But at this time, when we're sitting where, and I'll flip it, 45% of our students are not proficient in several areas. 45 to 40. So that's where that 2% would come from. The attendance piece, definitely. Going from 11% and expecting a 3% drop down to 8 would be very, very challenging. But that's where we would reassess that and say, based on where we're at, and again, the 3% drop in attendance is probably a very modest goal, given the fact that we know that a lot of students missed last year because they were quarantined for 10 days, right? So that completely out of their control. but that's just that's how we've documented it. And so you know, you would look at the 2021 year, why was it 14 and then the next year was 20? Well, I could say, well, probably because at the secondary, a student never really had to miss because they could have been online all day long, right? So there was never actually an attendance issue. So we're aware of that piece, and I would say as we start moving the needle closer to that higher level, we would reevaluate. For at this time, though, for the next 3 to 5, you know, we kind of felt like 2% was a very, you know, appropriate, yet still challenging, because that's our goal. We want to be challenged and we want to push ourselves, but we also want to put it to a range that's still very attainable.
Like Marika said, I think it's going to be important for us as a board to see how that compares statewide and region-wide, to understand, like, because right now it's pretty sobering to think that 45% of your students aren't proficient at things. But if we looked at the whole, it doesn't make it any better, but at least we can see how we compare against our peers. Like,
we will pull all of that and get it to Randy to send to the board. Thank you. You got it?
Yep, I've got it.
all right, any other questions for the team on school curriculum? All right, then we'll move into new business. Our first new business is Pam's going to talk to us about the school loan revolving fund resolution.
Thank you. This is our semi-annual payment. We do payments, so not too long ago you saw the annual application that we have to do for borrowing from the school bond loan fund. That's just put in an application and say we might need to borrow this year, so we did that, and you had that like a month or so ago. But we have payments coming up due November 1st, so we do a worksheet to see if we're going to need to borrow, and we do, it was on the application, so it's falling kind of in line with what we figured it would. So for the November payments, we need an approval to borrow the 283,461 to make our payments on the debts for November 1st.
You also correct me if I'm wrong, because I usually get this one depending on which bond fund or school fund. So for people that don't know this, right? One of the reasons a school district finds themselves in this position is because we only get disbursements from the state. Nope, this is not this one. I'll shut up. Shake your head at me, I'm wrong. All right.
Nope.
This one's
So
something else.
the two different borrowings that we may or may not have to do, the other one recently as well was the state aid note. That's the operating cash flow, and that's where we don't get our state aid in September. So it's kind of a dip in cash this time of year. So then you do the borrowing. This is for the debts, and those are twice a year. So that's like paying on our bonds, that we've had over the years. And we've got, I think, 5 right now. Some are refunded. If you recall, we just refunded one last year. So that's part of it. So there's like 5 of them that we're making payments on. And it's a $7 million assessment on those that we collect. So if you're not collecting quite enough to be able to make your payments, then that's where you have to borrow. This time of year is common if you're going to have to borrow, because we don't start collecting our tax collections on the debts until, they're being assessed right now. So we aren't going to get that. Those bills come due in February for people, residents that have to pay, or businesses that have to pay taxes. So we don't get that until really starting after the holidays, like January, we start getting that cash in. So May payments, you maybe don't have to borrow, but November you usually do, because that cash is low right now. On the worksheet that's included in your packet, you can see that that lists out the payments that are due November 1st, and then how much cash we have on hand for each of the debts. And you can see where the difference is and how we come up with the 283,461.
So then when the tax rolls catch back up, then we pay this back plus the
Yeah.
what we owe, right?
Yeah, we won't actually, when you borrow from the school bond loan fund, you won't actually pay back for a while. That kind of keeps going. We refunded some of that last summer with the refunding. It's just kind of all figured into, when you do a refunding, it's all figured into if you're going to save money or not. So we were able to, we had started borrowing with the passage of the 2018 bond, we had started borrowing once or twice because that millage, kind of got up there, and the tax collections weren't quite covering it. So we had started borrowing a couple times. We didn't have to, so we did have a balance with the school bond loan fund. And then when we refunded last summer, we were able to include some of that balance in the refunding to save some money, but not all of it. So there's still a balance out there, and now we're just going to add to it a little bit more. But you really don't start repaying on the school bond loan fund outside of refunding until you get where you're making enough tax collections where you don't have to borrow anymore. So that's probably a few years down the road.
Okay, so I think this needs a motion, so I'd be willing to entertain one at this time.
I'll make a motion to approve.
So the motion on the table is that the Board of Education approves the school bond qualification loan program application in the amount of $283,461 to meet the bond payments due November 1st. Do I have a second?
I support.
Any further discussion?
Just one question, Pam, do you know what kind of interest rate the state school bond fund gives us on this?
Yeah, that does float as well from time to time, but they tend to keep it a little lower than what you might see elsewhere. I think it's about 3% right now.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. I think next for new business is, do we have any other new public comment, right? Do we have any public comment? All right. Got a couple of them. All right, Katie, if you could make your way to the podium, so.
My name is Katie Schneider, and I am the parent of an 11th grader. I recently resigned from the position of Communications Director for the Mattawan High School Parent Association and also the Vice President of the Mattawan Athletic Boosters and also their IT Director as well. This was because of my disapproval of the handling of events by Mattawan High School administration in relation to three recent altercations involving the cross-country team. I believe that the consequences given to the perpetrator deviate significantly from the handbook and the athletic code. I was told today by Mr. Larner on the phone this afternoon that student consequences are determined by looking at who the student is, among other things. It's hard to ignore that the perpetrator is the son of a Mattawan High School employee and that consequences were chosen by her own coworkers. One of the very few things that Mr. Lerner and I agreed on today was that there is a need for policy change and policy review for our students. Board Policy 5610.01, page 2 of 9, states that the board shall suspend or expel a student in grade 6 or above for up to 180 days if the student commits physical or verbal assault at school against another student. Due to the conflict of interest in coworkers deciding consequences for their coworker's son,
and the significant deviations from the Mattawan High School Student Handbook and the Mattawan Athletic Code of Conduct, I'm asking the Board of Education to investigate and rule on recent verbal assaults, threats, and physical altercations that have taken place involving 4 cross-country team members. And that's my ask.
Appreciate it, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicki?
Hi, my name is Vicki Wanek. I have 4 kids in the district. Had one that graduated this past year, so that was a new experience as a parent for a first-time graduate. As a parent, I appreciate all you admin because I've had kids in all the buildings, so I appreciate that. The Wired Cats, that was a fun presentation because my son also, who graduated, participated in that program and really enjoyed it. Question, excuse me, I'm kind of coming back from a cold, so bear with me, please. Panorama survey, Kim, I know that you had that up. Is there a way to get the results? I know one of my childs just struggles socially, and I would just love to connect to know how she's doing. So I'm just curious to know if I'm able to get that report again like I did last year. This is something that's hard to say, and I know it's something that's out there, unfortunately. Candy Rainbow Fentanyl is the newest thing out there that is a drug. I asked my high school students if they do you know about it? I had one that said he's never heard about it. My other one said, yeah, I've heard about it on social media. I'm like, oh, okay. So they both have not heard of it at school, but one has heard of it through social media. I'm just here to ask, how can the school educate our kids about this? I think we can all agree that safety is key for our kids and educating them. I don't know if like a police officer could share or educate them of how dangerous this is. I mean, I basically came out to my kids and I said, this could kill you, so don't even think about it. I was recently at the Van Buren County board meeting for another reason, to advocate for broadband in our area. I'm one of the few in the area of no internet down our road. There's 5 Mattawan families that have no internet down our road. So I was there advocating for that. On a side note, there was let's see, I think it was a lady that works in a program that helps advocate for people with going into a program through the Van Buren County. And they actually said that the fentanyl that's coming across Mexico is even worse than ever. So I think this maybe, I don't know, I'm putting 2 to 2 together that this could be the rainbow candy that they're talking about. I don't know. But Randy, I don't know if that's going to be in your report for today. I know you're aware of it, but just thought I'd make the board aware of it as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. I failed to mention that during public comment, it seems kind of awkward, but in public comment, that's really the design of public comment is public comment, not public question and answer. So that's why we don't typically go back and forth there. But I have faith in Randy that he will get back with folks that had questions, and he'll utilize the staff and the resources at his disposal to answer the questions that the public has. And with that, I'll move to you, Randy, for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thanks again, board. A lot of great things going on in the meeting tonight. Just want to close our comments here with just a couple more items. First, I want to just kind of briefly talk about the strategic plan. You've heard pieces of that tonight, and I've kind of kept you apprised in other communications. You've got a graphic in front of you this evening, just kind of synthesizing, summarizing the targets and the goals. The lion's share of work that's happening now in terms of drafting action items is underway. department by department, through our district school improvement team as recently as this afternoon, actually working on action items through our building level administration and to staff regions throughout the district. So I want to thank the teams that are represented here tonight, just for the very important work of kind of fleshing out and kind of putting life to these goals. My hope is at the latest, at the December meeting, to present to the board the action items in their totality with some targeted deadlines. You know, are we looking at the next half year, the next year, 2 years out, and then kind of a developed tracker. So really a document that I can present to the board maybe quarterly, or we can talk about how often the board would like that. I think we talk maybe quarterly, just to show how we're doing on these action items, and that would be published on the website so the community can see, you know, just how the progress is getting made. So look forward to that. But just kind of wanted to put that in your hands there. So a couple other items. Saw a lot of you out at homecoming. It's always an exciting week. The beautiful weather, a little brisk. Somebody at this table was in the dunk tank. We'll just leave it at that, and we appreciate his sacrifice and service to the district.
The new definition for wetsuit.
Literally, yes. So it was a great week. It always is, and good energy, good football game, heavy attendance. It's great to see everybody out there, and just want to thank we got student council involved in that, our high school reps, Mr. Eastman and his team. I know that's a massive amount of work to pull that off. So it's always good to see the community out as well.
Could I interject one thing?
Yes.
I'd like to say that I really did like to see the cross-building activities this year for homecoming. That was really cool. I know a bunch of years ago that was a focus of administration and the staff to try to include more of the district in those homecoming activities. So I know our youngest learners were just as excited about Wacky Wednesday as the seniors were about White Lie Day for their T-shirt, right? So them feeling like that they got to participate in the homecoming activities, I think helps with the culture and getting kids excited to go from building to building. So thanks to the administration and staff for keeping that or starting that.
Absolutely, that was fun. So a couple other items, board, just for your thinking. Student counts are in count day. Of course, we go about 30 days after the actual count day. Just the state gives us time to kind of track down kids if they're sick or out. So this is kind of unconfirmed. We clocked in at about 375, or oh heavens. Yeah, panic if it's only 375 kids showing up. Yeah, 3,751 FTE, again, uncertified. That's up from a preliminary budget number FTE based on 3,729. So it's about a 22 FTE swing up. Again, uncertified. We're pretty confident it's going to hold at that. But just some context, this would have been at the end, the spring of last year, we were 3,580 kids. So that's about 171 student swing. And a lot of that shifting that was happening was due to virtual programming, COVID types of things, a lot of students coming in, leaving, homeschooling, going to a different school, and then I think the vast majority migrating back to Mattawan. So again, when we get that confirmed, it'll be the end of this month. I'll have that in an update, but it's encouraging news on the student counts, and I thought the board would kind of appreciate knowing that. And it's always a positive in the business department when the numbers come in above what the prelim is. That's always a good thing. Very good thing.
Is that number, sorry to interrupt again, is that number does that include the shared services?
Yes.
Okay.
Share time services, 120?
It's probably like 130-ish
Okay.
on that.
Yeah, and again, those numbers are still getting firmed up, but we should by month's end have that certified and get that information to the board. Big news just out of operations, just a reminder for the board, the chiller, it is here. It has arrived, and it was a scene. It was a very large piece of equipment. So that is like packaged and stored, and now we are or have been kind of speccing out the installation of that and sourcing parts, and that's probably the next big challenge, is sourcing out parts. So Brian Cornish is on top of that. The plan was to have that installed this summer, and we'll probably have him back in probably after the holiday, just to kind of talk to the board about that as we're getting closer to the summer. There was that second piece you might recall about the middle school, the units aging and what were we going to do there. He'll have an update on that. I mean, definitely having some supply chain concerns. We're confident we'll have the parts we need for that chiller install, the big one, but we had also talked about maybe piggybacking or sourcing out for the middle school. It's too soon to tell for that, but we'll have him back in. I think as we get closer to the winter or into the winter just a little bit, he'll have a better gauge on just where some of the part sourcing is happening and where we're at and how that schedule is unfolding. But the big thing is we have it, so that's good. That is a very good thing. A little worried there about when that was going to show up, and so I thought the board would be pleased to hear that. Couple other things, and then I'll open it up for questions. You may have seen on social media that we have, you may recall last year we had No Limits basketball. So the No Limits program kind of was a brainchild out of our whole child kind of department and the staff that serve on our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, kind of wanting to pair students with IEPs that are interested in athletics with students that don't have IEPs, and so they can all get together and kind of grow and learn from each other. And the basketball experience last year, if you had a chance to attend that or see any of the clips, it was pretty amazing, actually. High energy. Well, we have No Limits tennis. Actually just wrapped it up. And I'd like to give a shout out to a couple of our staff members, Angela Ryder, Cecilia Davis, Rob King, Food True. So Rob King, Food True, kind of stepped on as tennis, kind of helping out with tennis. You know, Angie and Cecilia kind of have been the backbone of the basketball, No Limits, the tennis. And I also hear rumblings that we're going to have a No Limits bowling in the winter. But just want to give a shout out. It's staff that step up like this, and we have them all across the district. It's not just the No Limits, but it's happening across the district. Staff stepping up, demonstrating this leadership ability, seeing a need, filling that need, and this is just a really special program. So I'll keep the board posted on the dates for that bowling piece that comes around, and really encourage you if you've got time to shoot out. It's normally right after school, and we'll also it sounds like basketball will also be on tap again. But just a great experience for everybody involved. Actually, that was the last piece on my list here this evening, and open it up for questions from the board. If you've got any remaining that have not been answered tonight.
I didn't follow instructions, so I asked mine as you were going, so I apologize.
That is perfectly fine. Interrupt me at any time, board. That is just fine. You notice I didn't miss a beat. Other board members. I'd appreciate it, board. Thank you very much.
All right, I think that concludes everything on the agenda. Board meeting next month will be November 14th. So, if you've got conflicts, please let me know. But that's what we're shooting for, and it'll be in here. So, I guess now's the time to adjourn if somebody wants to make that motion.
So moved.
I'll second it. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.